So, let's talk about darkness. And not the poetic kind where you sit in your bedroom with the curtains drawn because you're feeling a little too introspective. No, I mean real darkness. The kind that seeps into your thoughts when there's nothing left to distract you. The kind that doesn't just obscure your surroundings, but pokes at something deep in your nervous system, something ancient. Psychologically, darkness is more than just an absence of light. It's an active presence, a catalyst, a mirror to the things we avoid in daylight. Take sensory deprivation, for example. You put someone in complete darkness, strip away the distractions, the phones, the noise, the obligations, and the mind doesn't go quiet, it doesn't rest, it screams, it invents. There are studies where people placed in pitch black caves for weeks start hearing things, whispers, footsteps, their own name echoing from walls that aren't really there. Hallucinations happen not because the mind is failing, but because it's trying too hard to make sense of nothing. It craves pattern, it craves signal. So when there is none, it makes one. Our brains hate silence, they hate darkness, they associate it with danger. And that's not just folklore, it's evolution. Imagine you're a hunter-gatherer in the middle of a forest at night. You can't see, you can't hear much, but out there, lions can, wolves can. So your ancestors who weren't afraid of the dark, yeah, they probably didn't last long. That's why, even now, with all our technology and indoor lighting, we still flinch at creaky stairs when the lights go out. And this brings us to nyctophobia, the fear of the dark. Not the cinematic kind where a monster emerges from the closet, but the slow kind, the irrational dread you feel when walking alone in a parking garage at night. It's not just a childish fear, it's one of the oldest forms of self-preservation we have. Only now, we're scared of what's in our minds more than what's in the woods. Carl Jung called it the shadow self, the part of you that you repress, deny, or ignore. He said darkness wasn't just something outside of us, it's a metaphor for all the uncomfortable truths inside us. And the irony? The more you ignore the shadow, the more it grows. You push it away, bury it deeper, and it starts whispering at the edge of your dreams. Jung didn't think darkness was evil, he thought it was essential. You want to grow as a person, then you need to look your own darkness in the eye. You need to sit with it, listen to it, understand it, which is a lot easier said than done. And if you really want to understand what darkness does to the mind, look at prisoners kept in solitary confinement, especially in total darkness. It's not just punishment, it's psychological erosion. You take away the sun, the rhythms of day and night, and you slowly chip away at the person. Days blur, time stops existing in any meaningful way. Some inmates begin to hallucinate, others spiral into disassociation. There's something about being alone in the dark that unravels the very concept of the self. But not all interpretations of darkness are so bleak. Some therapists, and I mean the more experimental kind, see darkness as womb-like, a place not of death, but rebirth. Think about it. Before you were born, you spent 9 months in warm, silent darkness. Some rites of passage actually simulate this by having initiates spend time in dark caves. The idea is you're shedding an old self and preparing to be reborn. Weird, right? That the same environment that drives some people insane can give others peace, but that's what darkness does. It amplifies what's already inside of you. If you're lost, it swallows you. If you're searching, it may just show you something. And then there's the relationship between darkness and mood. Ever heard of seasonal affective disorder? It's not just a cute acronym. SAD is real. People in northern latitudes where sunlight disappears for months often fall into depression. Why? Because sunlight helps regulate serotonin. Without it, your mood dips. Melatonin production rises, your sleep gets messy, your circadian rhythms go haywire. It's like your body forgets how to be human. That's the thing. We were built for light, we crave it, thrive in it. But the absence of it, that changes everything. Even your dreams. The pineal gland in your brain reacts to darkness by secreting melatonin. That's what makes you sleepy. But in constant darkness, melatonin surges wildly. People begin to sleep at odd hours. Their sense of time breaks. Some develop 28-hour or even 36-hour sleep cycles. Imagine going to bed at 2 a.m., waking up at 2 p.m., then going to bed at 6 a.m. the next time, then 10 a.m. after that. That's what happens when there's no light to tell your body what's real. And so, darkness bends the mind, sometimes it breaks it, but maybe that's not always bad. Because let's be honest, most of us live in overstimulated environments, constant light, constant noise. Maybe that's why some people seek out the dark. They go off-grid, into caves, into float tanks. They meditate with blindfolds on, hoping to finally shut out the world. Darkness becomes not a threat, but a doorway. And yes, it's scary. It forces you to look inward, to face the shadow, to feel all the things you've been running from. But maybe that's what makes it powerful. Maybe the terror we feel in darkness isn't from monsters or ghosts, but from the realization that we don't really know ourselves. And the dark is the one place we can't lie about that. So next time you find yourself alone in a dark room, try something. Don't reach for your phone. Don't turn on the light. Just sit there. Breathe. Let the quiet settle in. You might be surprised what comes out of the dark to greet you. And maybe, just maybe, it's been waiting for you this whole time. Darkness, it's one thing to feel it psychologically, but it's another thing entirely to think about it, to sit with it like a philosopher with nothing but a candle, a blank page, and way too much time. Philosophically, darkness has been treated with fear, reverence, confusion, and sometimes, weirdly enough, love. Let's start with the classic, Plato's Cave. You've probably heard of it, but let's really think about what it means. Imagine you're born in a cave, chained, facing a wall. The only things you've ever seen are shadows cast by firelight behind you. That's your world. That's your reality. You think the shadows are reality, but one day someone escapes. They climb out of the cave, eyes burning, and they see the sun. Real objects, colors, truth. They go back to tell everyone, and nobody believes them. In fact, they get ridiculed, possibly even killed. Why? Because truth hurts. Because leaving the darkness takes courage, and worse, it demands change. So in this metaphor, darkness is ignorance, not evil, not malicious, just uninformed, comfortably unaware, and that might be the most dangerous kind of darkness, the kind that feels safe. Now skip ahead a couple thousand years and land in ancient China. Taoism gives us something very different, yin and yang. Here, darkness isn't ignorance, it's not something to escape, it's balance. Yin is the dark, the feminine, the receptive, the nurturing. It's the soil that lets seeds grow, the night that lets you rest, the emptiness that makes a cup useful. Without darkness, there is no light, and light without darkness, that's just blinding. Western philosophy tends to treat darkness like something to fix. Eastern philosophy often sees it as something to understand, but if you want to go from mystical to existentially uncomfortable, then you gotta bring Nietzsche into the room, and you better dim the lights. Nietzsche once said, "If you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." Now that sounds dramatic, and it is, but it's also kind of perfect. The abyss here is darkness. Not just physical darkness, but emotional and moral emptiness. It's the void you stare into when you're questioning the point of everything, life, meaning, morality. And if you stare too long, it stares back. Which is to say, the darkness inside you starts to wake up. You realize how fragile your sense of self is, how much you rely on illusion to make life bearable. And once those illusions crack, once the light of false certainty dies, well, now you're just standing in the dark with a bunch of questions that don't have answers, which leads to the existentialists, Sartre, Camus, Kierkegaard. These are the guys who didn't flinch when the void stared back. In fact, they said, "Yep, it's empty, so now what?" Darkness to them wasn't some external threat, it was the natural state of being, the unknown, the unnameable. Camus famously said that the only real philosophical question is whether or not to like, thanks dude. But buried in all that gloom is something kind of beautiful. If the world has no meaning, then we are free to create our own. If the universe is dark, then we become the light. It's terrifying, but freeing. It's the kind of freedom that demands responsibility. You're not here to be handed a reason to live, you're here to make one. But let's pivot for a second. In many ancient traditions, darkness isn't the end of things, it's the beginning. Take the idea that the universe was born not from light, but from darkness. The void came first, chaos, primordial soup, and from that soup, light emerged, not as a conqueror, but as a child. In Egyptian mythology, Nun was the dark waters of chaos before creation. In the Bible, darkness was over the surface of the deep before let there be light. In Hindu cosmology, the god Vishnu rests on a serpent in a dark, infinite ocean before the universe begins. The message, darkness is the canvas, light is just the paint, creation needs the dark. And this brings us to mysticism, specifically the dark night of the soul. A phrase coined by St. John of the Cross, a Spanish mystic who basically went through a full-blown spiritual breakdown. He described a period where everything he believed in crumbled. No joy in prayer, no comfort in belief, just silence, void, nothing. And yet this dark night wasn't punishment, It was purification, a necessary death of the ego before spiritual rebirth. Darkness here was not the enemy of God, but the hidden face of God, the part you only meet when everything else falls away. We don't talk about that enough. That spiritual clarity often comes after the lights go out, and so maybe darkness is a kind of honesty. Maybe it strips away the surface stuff, the roles we play, the illusions we cling to, and shows us who we really are. Maybe it's not a monster under the bed, maybe it's a mirror. But mirrors are hard to look at when you're not sure you'll like what you see. So what do we do with that? Do we avoid darkness, medicate it, light candles and chase it out of our rooms, or do we sit with it? Listen to it, ask it questions. Maybe the real question isn't what is darkness, but what is our relationship to it? Do we fear it because we were taught to? Or because there's something in there we haven't made peace with yet? Maybe both. But if I've learned anything reading through these philosophers and mystics and night dwellers, it's this. Darkness doesn't want to hurt you, it just wants to be seen. And maybe, so do you. Let's stop whispering about darkness like it's some emotional metaphor and actually ask, what is it? Science, ever the buzzkill of poetry, will tell you that darkness isn't a thing. It's not a substance, it's not a force, it's just the absence of visible light. That's it. That's the tweet. Darkness doesn't technically exist. It's what's left behind when photons stop showing up to the party. But if it doesn't exist, then why does it feel so present? Why does it sit heavy on our chests, wrap around us like a weighted blanket with trust issues? Turns out, there's a lot more going on. Outer space is, for the most part, an infinite void of darkness. Not because it's empty of stars, but because of distance and redshift. You see, the light from stars billions of light years away is still traveling to us. But as the universe expands, that light gets stretched, redshifted so much that it slips out of the visible spectrum and into infrared or beyond. That's why when you look into the night sky, you're staring into history and into silence. The dark isn't empty. It's full of ancient messages we haven't translated yet. And then there's dark matter. Sounds like something invented by comic book writers, but it's real. At least we think it is. It makes up roughly 27% of the universe. It doesn't emit light or absorb it or reflect it. We can't see it, touch it, or photograph it. But we know it's there because of its gravitational effects. Galaxies spin in a way that doesn't make sense unless you account for this invisible mass pulling at them. It's like the ghost of the cosmos, always present, never seen. And as if that wasn't confusing enough, there's dark energy, even more mysterious. It makes up about 68% of the universe and is thought to be the reason the expansion of the universe is speeding up. In other words, not only is the universe dark, it's getting more dark and faster. Scientists named it dark energy, not because they understand it, but because they don't. It's like naming your depression Steve because you don't know what else to call it. But let's shrink things down a bit, from the cosmic to the human. Our eyes were not designed for darkness. Well, not total darkness. We have these things called rod cells, little photoreceptors in our retina that kick in when it gets dim. They don't give you color, but they let you see in low light. The catch? They take time to warm up, about 20 to 30 minutes in the dark before your night vision peaks. That's why walking into a movie theater feels like being punched in the soul for a minute, and why stargazing gets better the longer you sit still in silence. But there's a limit. You can't see darkness. That's the weird part. You see objects in darkness, but true pitch black, there's nothing to perceive. It's not black, it's nothing. And that nothingness messes with your brain. Float tanks, deep caves, sensory deprivation pods, they all play with this edge of perception. No input equals hallucination. The brain starts projecting visuals just to stay entertained. There's this guy, Michel Sifra, who in the 60s decided to live in a cave with no sunlight for months. He lost all sense of time, slept whenever, worked whenever. After a while, he was 48 hours off the real time. His body started developing its own rhythm, 28-hour cycles instead of 24. Darkness had literally reprogrammed his brain. It's like your body goes, well, since we're off the grid now, I guess time is fake. And speaking of darkness in life, let's head underwater. Deep underwater. Go far enough below the ocean surface and you'll reach what scientists call the midnight zone. It's a place of total, permanent darkness. No sunlight gets down there, and yet life thrives. Bioluminescent creatures light themselves up. Anglerfish have glowing lures that dangle in front of their face like a horror movie come to life. Jellyfish pulse like neon signs in a forgotten nightclub. Here, light is currency, it's bait, it's camouflage, and it's all artificial. These creatures don't rely on the sun. Some don't rely on light at all. Around hydrothermal vents, those black smokers at the bottom of the sea, life exists through chemosynthesis. These organisms convert chemicals like hydrogen sulfide into energy. That means you don't need sunlight to sustain life, just the right chemistry. Which makes you wonder, could life exist in the dark oceans of Europa, one of Jupiter's moons? Or deep underground on Mars? Maybe darkness isn't hostile to life, maybe it's just a different kind of habitat. And darkness doesn't just live underwater. It lives underground, caves and catacombs where our ancestors painted walls with their hands and their fears. In these environments, the absence of light changes more than mood, it changes biology. People who've lived in caves for long stretches describe their dreams becoming more vivid, their sense of smell improving. They start to feel time instead of count it. In darkness, the line between inside and outside, the physical and the mental, begins to blur. Even plants, the poster children for sunshine, have an interesting relationship with darkness. Sure, they need light for photosynthesis, but they also need night. During darkness, plants undergo respiration, they rest, repair, grow. Total light exposure actually stresses them out. It's almost as if everything, even the most sun-loving organisms, need their shadow moments to recover. And then there's us, our obsession with controlling darkness. We invented fire, then lamps, then Edison got involved, and now half the world never really goes dark, and that's causing problems. Artificial light at night is disrupting ecosystems, confusing migratory patterns in birds and insects, and throwing off our own circadian rhythms. We've tried so hard to eliminate darkness that we've forgotten it's part of the design. Maybe that's the lesson. That darkness isn't an error. It's not the absence of life or thought or meaning. It's part of the pattern. It's the negative space that makes the painting work. Without it, everything would just be overexposed, flattened, meaningless. So, yeah, darkness isn't a thing you can bottle or touch, but scientifically it's a boundary, a clue, a signal that something has shifted, that the photons have left the room and now it's your move. It humbles us, confuses us, and dares us to see what we'll do when there's no spotlight, no audience, no script. Will we fumble? Maybe. But maybe we'll also learn to glow on our own, because the real question isn't how we light up the world, it's whether we can live, really live, when the lights go out. Darkness is easy to ignore when it's outside your window or hidden behind your eyelids, but when you're under it, in it, it becomes something else entirely. Not just a condition, but a place, a world without sunrises, a kingdom of shadows and silence, the underground, the underwater. These are domains of true darkness, places where light has to fight to exist and where the human body and mind are forced to adapt, or break. Let's start underground, not metaphorically, literally. Let's go back to Michel Siffre, the man that descended into a cave in the French Alps for 2 months. No sunlight, no clocks, no human contact, just darkness. His goal? To study how humans perceive time in the absence of external cues. The result? His sense of time broke completely. He thought only a few weeks had passed when he was finally pulled out. His body developed its own rhythm, an almost lunar cycle. And his mind? Well, he started hallucinating. He talked to spiders, he forgot who he was sometimes. He called it a voyage into inner space, which sounds poetic, but also completely horrifying. But Siffre wasn't alone in this. Other cave experiments showed similar patterns. People who spend extended periods in caves without light lose track of reality. They dream differently. They start to feel like they're floating inside themselves. The mind, desperate for input, begins inventing things, sounds, shapes, presences. And this brings us to something called the third man factor. It's been reported by explorers, cave divers, and solo sailors. In moments of extreme isolation, especially in darkness, people often feel a presence, a figure that appears beside them, not threatening, but guiding, comforting, like someone or something is keeping them company in the abyss. Some say it's a spiritual phenomenon. Others say it's a survival mechanism, the brain's way of protecting itself from collapse. Either way, it's eerie. Imagine being so alone that your mind invents a companion just to keep you sane. But isolation isn't always by choice. For centuries, caves have been used as prisons, as punishment. Think about it. No light, no exit, just walls, darkness, and the slow unraveling of your identity. Historical accounts from miners, prisoners, and hermits often describe the same thing. Time becomes soft. Thoughts loop. The silence gets loud. And the darkness, it starts to feel like a living thing, a roommate, breathing, watching. But caves haven't just been sites of punishment, they've been temples, sanctuaries, birthplaces of gods and stories. Religious isolation in darkness has a long and strange history. The Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation in the cave of Hira. Buddhist monks in the Himalayas practice dark retreats where they live in absolute darkness for weeks or months. No light, no noise, no distractions. Why? To dissolve the ego, to invite visions, to face the self without the filters of sight. Some report seeing lights, brilliant internal lights after enough time in darkness. Like the mind deprived of external reality starts illuminating its own, and that's the paradox. Darkness strips away so much that it eventually starts giving back. Now, let's go deeper. Underwater darkness is something else entirely. If caves are quiet and confining, the ocean is vast and crushing. The deeper you go, the darker it gets. And below 1,000 meters, total darkness. No sunlight, no colors, no landmarks, just endless black water. Welcome to the Midnight Zone. It's not empty though, far from it. Life here has adapted in mind-bending ways. Bioluminescent creatures flash and flicker in the dark like alien fireflies. There are fish with transparent skulls, octopuses that turn themselves inside out, sharks that glow in the dark. Light here isn't just a tool, it's survival, it's camouflage, it's language. And yet, for all their glow, these creatures live in one of the harshest environments imaginable. Freezing cold, crushing pressure, complete isolation. It's not just dark, it's deadly, and that changes the rules. There's no room for eyes that see color, no need for fast metabolism. Everything is slow, quiet, efficient. The darkness forces a different kind of life, one that feels more like endurance than thriving. But what happens when humans go down there? Diving in the Midnight Zone isn't just physically risky, it's mentally destabilizing. Deep-sea divers often report hallucinations, not from darkness alone, but from nitrogen narcosis. Still, the effect is the same. Things start to bend, shapes flicker, time warps. You hear things, you feel things, and worst of all, you lose your sense of direction. Up and down become meaningless. It's the closest thing we have to being in space, except wetter, colder, and darker. Darkness is easy to ignore when it's outside your window or hidden behind your eyelids, but when you're under it, in it, it becomes something else entirely. Not just a condition, but a place, a world without sunrises, a kingdom of shadows and silence, the underground, the underwater. These are domains of true darkness, places where light has to fight to exist and where the human body and mind are forced to adapt or break. Let's start underground, not metaphorically, literally. Let's go back to Michel Siffre, the man that descended into a cave in the French Alps for 2 months. No sunlight, no clocks, no human contact, just darkness. His goal? To study how humans perceive time in the absence of external cues. The result? His sense of time broke completely. He thought only a few weeks had passed when he was finally pulled out. His body developed its own rhythm, an almost lunar cycle. And his mind? Well, he started hallucinating. He talked to spiders, he forgot who he was sometimes. He called it a voyage into inner space, which sounds poetic, but also completely horrifying. But Siffre wasn't alone in this. Other cave experiments showed similar patterns. People who spend extended periods in caves without light lose track of reality. They dream differently. They start to feel like they're floating inside themselves. The mind, desperate for input, begins inventing things, sounds, shapes, presences. And this brings us to something called the third man factor. It's been reported by explorers, cave divers, and solo sailors. In moments of extreme isolation, especially in darkness, people often feel a presence. A figure that appears beside them, not threatening, but guiding, comforting, like someone or something is keeping them company in the abyss. Some say it's a spiritual phenomenon. Others say it's a survival mechanism, the brain's way of protecting itself from collapse. Either way, it's eerie. Imagine being so alone that your mind invents a companion just to keep you sane. But isolation isn't always by choice. For centuries, caves have been used as prisons, as punishment. Think about it. No light, no exit, just walls, darkness, and the slow unraveling of your identity. Historical accounts from miners, prisoners, and hermits often describe the same thing. Time becomes soft, thoughts loop, the silence gets loud, and the darkness, it starts to feel like a living thing, a roommate, breathing, watching. But caves haven't just been sites of punishment, they've been temples, sanctuaries, birthplaces of gods and stories. Religious isolation in darkness has a long and strange history. The Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation in the cave of Hira. Buddhist monks in the Himalayas practice dark retreats where they live in absolute darkness for weeks or months. No light, no noise, no distractions. Why? To dissolve the ego, to invite visions, to face the self without the filters of sight. Some report seeing lights, brilliant internal lights after enough time in darkness. Like the mind deprived of external reality starts illuminating its own, and that's the paradox. Darkness strips away so much that it eventually starts giving back. Now, let's go deeper. Underwater darkness is something else entirely. If caves are quiet and confining, the ocean is vast and crushing. The deeper you go, the darker it gets. And below 1,000 meters, total darkness. No sunlight, no colors, no landmarks, just endless black water. Welcome to the Midnight Zone. It's not empty though, far from it. Life here has adapted in mind-bending ways. Bioluminescent creatures flash and flicker in the dark like alien fireflies. There are fish with transparent skulls, octopuses that turn themselves inside out, sharks that glow in the dark. Light here isn't just a tool, it's survival, it's camouflage, it's language. And yet, for all their glow, these creatures live in one of the harshest environments imaginable: freezing cold, crushing pressure, complete isolation. It's not just dark, it's deadly, and that changes the rules. There's no room for eyes that see color, no need for fast metabolism. Everything is slow, quiet, efficient. The darkness forces a different kind of life, one that feels more like endurance than thriving. But what happens when humans go down there? Diving in the Midnight Zone isn't just physically risky, it's mentally destabilizing. Deep sea divers often report hallucinations, not from darkness alone, but from nitrogen narcosis. Still, the effect is the same. Things start to bend, shapes flicker, time warps. You hear things, you feel things, and worst of all, you lose your sense of direction. Up and down become meaningless. It's the closest thing we have to being in space, except wetter, colder, and darker. There's something deeply alien about underwater darkness. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't even notice you. And that kind of indifference, it messes with your head. And then, there are the ones who lived in darkness for their entire lives. Coal miners, generations of them, working miles beneath the earth with barely enough light to see their own hands, breathing dust, hearing the groans of rock above them. Historical accounts talk about how miners began to change psychologically. The longer they stayed underground, the more anxious they became above ground. The sun felt too bright, open skies made them nervous, the darkness had become home, and yet it was slowly killing them. That's the thing about darkness. It's not just a setting, it becomes a part of you. It seeps into your rhythms, your breathing, your memory. When you live in it long enough, it stops feeling like an absence and starts to feel like a language. But not everyone sees darkness as something to survive. For some, it's a destination, a place to find something, like truth or God or peace. Because down in those caves, beneath the sea, where no sunlight ever reaches, there's a silence you can't find anywhere else. Not just silence from noise, but from expectation, from performance, from ego. It's just you, your heartbeat, and whatever thoughts you haven't made peace with yet. And maybe that's why darkness scares us. Not because of what's in it, but because of what we bring into it. For all of human history, darkness has never just been the absence of light. That definition is too clean, too technical. For us, it's always meant more. Across time, across cultures, darkness has been the backdrop of origin stories, the resting place of gods, the corridor of death, and the hidden home of power. It's been sacred, it's been feared, sometimes both at the same time. In ancient Egypt, the darkness wasn't just tolerated, it was revered. Before creation, before gods, there was none. The dark waters, a boundless, chaotic ocean that held all potential. It wasn't evil, it wasn't even threatening, it was pregnant, waiting. And from this darkness, the first light, the sun god Ra, emerged. Even the underworld, Duat, wasn't just a punishment pit. It was a journey through darkness, a nightly passage Ra himself made after sunset, battling serpents and shadows to rise again. Darkness was transformation, a challenge, not a curse. Jump over to Greece and you meet Nyx, the goddess of night. Not just a side character, but one of the first beings to ever exist, older than Zeus, so powerful that even he feared her. Think about that. The king of the gods, the wielder of thunder, afraid of the night. Because Nyx didn't just rule it, she was it. A cosmic entity of mystery, birth, death, dreams. In her darkness, the world reset itself every night. But not all mythologies are so kind. In Mesoamerican cultures like the Maya, darkness often had teeth. Xibalba, the underworld, was terrifying. a dark, damp realm full of trickster gods and deadly trials. The Mayans believed the sun itself had to journey through this place every night just to rise again. Darkness here wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a battleground. Survival was never guaranteed. Still, whether sacred or hostile, darkness was respected, and one of the reasons it shows up so often in myth is because it sits at the border between life and death. Light is birth, darkness is burial, light is vision, darkness is mystery. The afterlife in many cultures is described in shadow. Greek Hades is not a fiery hell, it's a gray, misty realm beneath the earth. Souls wander, dreams leak through, and time dissolves. Darkness isn't punishment in these stories, it's process. In Japanese Shintoism, darkness is where the kami, the spirits, dwell. Not necessarily in the heavens, but in shadows, forests, caves. The divine isn't always bright and loud, sometimes it whispers, sometimes it hides. A shrine deep in a dark grove isn't feared, it's holy, peaceful. You bow before it, not because it's scary, but because it feels beyond you. And then there's Africa. Among the Dogon people of Mali, darkness is once again the beginning. Before the stars, before light, there was Amma, the creator, resting in a dark void. Their cosmology is deep and incredibly sophisticated. They speak of star systems we only recently discovered with telescopes. Their myths say we come from darkness, and not in a dramatic, apocalyptic sense, but in a cosmic, inevitable one. In these stories, light is what interrupts darkness, not the other way around. Then Christianity shows up and flips the script. Here, darkness is often framed as evil. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. Darkness becomes the symbol of sin, confusion, separation from the divine. And look, that's not the whole picture. Mystical Christian traditions like those from the Desert Fathers or apophatic theology talk about the cloud of unknowing, a holy darkness, a space where God is too vast to see. In these mystic texts, you don't find God in sunlight, you find him in the silence, in the unlit corners of your heart. But Western religion, especially over time, leaned hard into dualism. Light equals good, dark equals bad. It's clean, it's convenient, it's kind of lazy, and that dichotomy bled into everything else: language, art, skin, morality. It made it easy to other people to divide the world. That's not darkness's fault, that's ours. Hinduism brings us someone like Kali, a goddess draped in darkness, black as night, tongue out, eyes wide, dancing on the body of her lover. She's terrifying, she's beautiful, she is both destruction and creation, time, death, liberation, all wrapped in one wild cosmic storm. You don't worship Kali to be comfortable, you worship her to be changed. She reminds you that darkness isn't gentle, but it is honest, because that's the theme we keep returning to: darkness as truth, as the original state, the womb, the ocean, the space between stars. It's not always fun, sometimes it breaks you, but myths around the world seem to agree you don't get to light until you've passed through the dark. You don't become a hero by staying in the sun. You become a hero by entering the cave, facing the beast, stealing fire, or climbing back out with something new. Whether that's knowledge, power, or just the courage to go back into your life and keep going. Even death, our greatest fear, is framed as a return to darkness, not because it's bad, but because it's natural. The same darkness we emerge from, we will go back into. And maybe, just maybe, it's not the end. Maybe it's a cycle. Maybe we're just flipping the light switch again. So darkness in myths and cultures isn't just a setting, it's a character, a force, sometimes cruel, sometimes wise, always watching and always there before anything else. Maybe that's the secret no one wants to admit. That darkness came first, and it will be the last thing we see. But between those two, between the first shadow and the final one, we have a brief flicker of light, and it's what we do with that light that tells the story. Darkness isn't just something we experience or mythologize, it's something we create with, something we paint with. Art, literature, and cinema have long had a love affair with shadow, not as a background but as the real subject, darkness not just as color but as concept. And the deeper you look, the more you realize we don't just use darkness to scare, we use it to say something, to confess, to reveal, to break open the parts of us we don't know how to explain. Gothic literature practically canonized darkness. The castles are dark, the forests are dark, the souls of the characters, you guessed it. But it's not just for aesthetic. Think Frankenstein. It's not about a green monster. It's about a man's obsession with creating life, playing God, and the overwhelming regret when he realizes what he's done. The darkness isn't the monster, it's the guilt, the alienation, the coldness of ambition without empathy, and Mary Shelley didn't write it on a sunny beach. She wrote it in the middle of a volcanic ash cloud during the year without a summer, while stuck indoors under literal darkness. That gloom seeped into her story. Then there's Dracula, the original suave, brooding monster. The man lives in a castle full of shadows, eats only at night, and transforms into mist and bats. But the real darkness, it's in the fear of foreignness, of sexuality, of power that can't be controlled. Dracula isn't just a vampire. He's the embodiment of Victorian anxiety, the fear that beneath all this order and moral superiority, we're still animals, still creatures of the night. In film, this relationship with darkness only got stronger. Enter film noir, a genre born from war, trauma, and disillusionment. The lighting is harsh, the shadows are long, the characters are morally gray, sometimes pitch black. Think The Third Man or Double Indemnity. The darkness isn't just in the alleyways, it's in the dialogue, the motivations. These films didn't try to hide the fact that people can be selfish, broken, or irredeemable. They put it in silhouette and let it speak. Darkness in cinema isn't just visual, it's tonal, and maybe that's why audiences love it. Not because we like feeling scared or sad, but because in those moments of shadow, things finally feel honest, like we're being told the truth for once, and it's not just horror or crime films, even fantasy and sci-fi lean hard into darkness. Think of the Lord of the Rings. Sauron is literally called the Dark Lord. Mordor is a land of ash and shadow. But Frodo's journey isn't just from the Shire to Mount Doom, it's from innocence into trauma. The light he carries, literally the Phial of Galadriel, is a symbol of hope in places where all other light has failed. It's a small flame in overwhelming darkness, and it makes that darkness feel real, heavy, earned. Darkness is the proving ground. In Dante's Inferno, the descent into hell begins in darkness. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward path had been lost. It's not just a physical journey, it's a spiritual reckoning. The light is gone, the guide is needed, and the soul must walk through fire and shadow to be cleansed. The darkness is not punishment. It's a necessary confrontation with every sin, every fear, every failure. Romantic poets took this even further. Wordsworth, Byron, Shelley, they didn't see darkness as something to flee. They saw it as sublime, a way to feel small, humbled, awed by the vastness of nature and existence. The dark became a way to reconnect with mystery, with feeling, with a kind of sadness that was not weakness but depth. There's a line from Lord Byron that goes, "I had a dream, which was not all a dream." The bright sun was extinguished, and the stars did wander darkling in the eternal space. It's from his poem Darkness, written during a global climate disaster. And it doesn't offer hope, it offers the end. But in that end, it offers beauty, a final honesty, a candle blown out but still warm. And then, of course, there's Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft didn't do vampires or werewolves. He did something worse. He made the darkness cosmic. His monsters didn't lurk under the bed. They lurked in the stars, in ancient ruins, in dimensions we can't comprehend. His darkness wasn't personal, it was universal. And the scariest part? The knowledge that the universe doesn't care about you, that the dark isn't out to get you. It doesn't even notice you. It's that flavor of horror that sticks. Not the scream, but the silence afterward. The dread, the unexplainable noise in the distance that never resolves. That's what Lovecraft understood. The darkness doesn't have to move, it just has to be. And if you think this is all niche and nerdy, think again. Today's art, music, video games, they're soaked in shadows. We crave the dark. Not because we're morbid, but because we're human. Because sometimes we want stories that don't tie up neatly, songs that don't resolve, images that sit in our chest like a weight, that make us feel something, because feeling darkness is proof we're still alive. Art has always used darkness to get past your defenses, to slip under your armor and whisper, "You feel this too, don't you?" And whether that's grief, loneliness, existential dread, or unspoken desire, it connects us, it binds us. Because ultimately, we're not afraid of the dark because of what it hides. We're afraid of it because it reveals too much. So, after all this time wandering through caves, myths, psychology, and outer space, let's zoom in on the weird stuff. The strange, the specific, the beautifully unsettling truths that live quietly in the corners of what we call darkness. Because for all our metaphors and myths, sometimes facts are the most poetic things of all. Let's start with a deceptively simple one. You can't actually see black in absolute darkness. Black is a color, a perception. It's what your eyes interpret when something absorbs all wavelengths of visible light. But in a pitch-black environment where no photons are hitting your retina, there's no signal at all. You're not seeing black, you're seeing nothing, a visual void, and your brain hates that. It starts inventing things, shadows that aren't there, movement in the corners of your perception. The absence of sight becomes a breeding ground for imagination, and sometimes for terror. But it's not just your eyes that panic, your ears get louder in the dark. Seriously, darkness can sound loud. When deprived of visual input, your brain compensates by turning up the gain on other senses. You start hearing the creak of your bones, the whisper of blood in your ears, the ticking of things you never knew ticked. People in sensory deprivation tanks often report hearing voices, music, or strange frequencies. Not because they're hallucinating, though sometimes they are, but because their brains are desperately trying to fill the void. And then there's the ultimate survivor of darkness, the bat. Bats don't need light at all. They use echolocation, essentially sound vision, to map their world. They shout into the night and interpret the echoes. In a way, they see with sound better than we do with sight. They live their entire lives in caves under moonlight or in the shade of the forest canopy. And they thrive. The darkness isn't a handicap, it's their home court. But we're not so good at it. Take Zoraida Rosello. In 2007, she volunteered for one of the most extreme isolation experiments ever conducted. She spent 130 days in an underground cave in Spain, alone, no natural light, no clocks, no communication. When she finally emerged, her circadian rhythm was shattered, her sense of time had fractured. She had trouble re-entering normal life. Days didn't feel like days. Nights didn't feel like sleep. She said she missed color, not people, not warmth. Color, the visual hum of daylight. Darkness had rewritten her experience of reality. And then there's nature's briefest, most theatrical flirtation with darkness, the total eclipse. For just a few minutes, daylight vanishes. The sun is blotted out, and something shifts. Animals go silent. Birds return to nests. Crickets start chirping. It's like the entire world gasps at the same time, and then the light returns, and nothing quite feels the same. Eclipses remind us that darkness can fall even when the sky is clear, that the sun, the thing we take for granted every day, can disappear in the blink of a cosmic alignment. And you know what's wild? Darkness might actually make us more creative. Studies have shown that people in dimly lit rooms are more likely to think imaginatively, more likely to explore new ideas. Why? Because darkness loosens our inhibition. It gives us permission to imagine without judgment. It's like the brain says, no one's watching, let's get weird. And we do. Writers, painters, inventors, so many of them do their best work at night. Not because night is magical, but because it frees us from the tyranny of clarity. And some people take that freedom to the extreme. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a practice called a dark retreat. Monks live in pitch black rooms for weeks, sometimes months. No light, no sound, no contact. The goal, ego death, spiritual awakening. They claim to see inner light, vivid visions. Some say it feels like rebirth, others say it feels like death. Maybe it's both. That's kind of the point. Darkness is always pulling double duty, ending something, beginning something else. Even in sleep, we find it. Dream researchers have found that people who sleep in total darkness often have more vivid, detailed dreams. It's not just about REM cycles, it's about eliminating visual noise. Darkness clears the stage, and in that void, the mind can finally put on a show. And sometimes, those dreams are lucid. Sometimes you wake up inside them and realize you're dreaming, and in that moment, darkness becomes a canvas, a laboratory for the soul. And honestly, isn't that what it's always been? The thing about darkness is it's not just mysterious, it's familiar. We were born in it, we sleep in it, we dream in it, we die into it. It's not just what's outside the campfire. It's what's beneath the campfire, what surrounds the spark. And maybe that's what makes it so important. Because in every story, in every myth, in every science experiment, or religious retreat, or painting, or film noir monologue, darkness isn't the enemy, it's the frame. It defines the shape of the light. Without it, the hero has no journey. The poem has no pause, the canvas has no contrast. Without it, we never appreciate the morning. We never earn the sunrise. So when we ask, what is darkness? Maybe we're not really asking about physics, or fear, or theology. Maybe we're asking about ourselves. About what we become when the lights go out, and the answer, that's up to you, because darkness will come. And what you find in it is what you bring with you. The question is, are you brave enough to sit in it long enough to find out? If this narrative resonated with you, do support us. Hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe. Thank you for staying with us to the end. See you in the next video on Plaid Chronicles.